Hello, everyone. My name is Anna Evan, and I'm here with Caitlin Johnson. You know both of us, so this should be good. We are here to talk about religion in the classroom. And of course, we've got a slightly adapted version of this lesson today, given that we're online. So work with us here. We're going to do our best. Religion in the classroom can be a tricky discussion to have. As a theology major, that looks slightly different for me. But for most of you, you might end up in public schools. And so being able to address religion is going to be a vital importance in your classroom. So, how to acknowledge the diversity within your own classroom, and then also respect the diversity that is not within your classroom through the things that you teach your students or the ways that you present other information, especially with regard to things like social studies, for example, or even cultural things like music can be highly influenced by religion. Usually we would have a video, but I believe you guys watched that on your own today. So pretend we're watching a video right now, or pause this, go watch the video, and then come back.
Okay, so another good thing to look at with this topic is some statistics. So these statistics are from the Pew Research Center, so it's a really good place to get research from. But the stats are from public schools. And so these come from an article written by Pew. And it was about how, for some students, religion is a part of the regular school day in a public school. So the statistic on the left shows us what percentage of teachers have led their class in prayer. And this is a sample of about 1,800 teenagers ranging from 13 to 17 years old. And this is a pretty interesting statistic, especially because in 1962, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that teachers and administrators could not lead prayer within public schools. However, this particular statistic asked students who have ever had a teacher lead prayer, and it included that the teacher was reading from the Bible, even if it was an example of literature or it was leading into discussion about religion as a whole. So it could be kind of misleading because we don't actually know how many actually led prayer in the classroom, or it was to introduce a topic for discussion. So it's far more common for teachers to lead prayer in the South than any other area. And even nationwide, 4 in 10 teens say that it's appropriate for a teacher to lead prayer within the classroom, even with the ruling of the Supreme Court. And so the statistic on the right specifically takes a look at what students see religion with their school. And this is mainly through clothing and jewelry. So a lot of people can wear cross necklaces or some wear Islamic headscarves. You see that in schools. And so that's how a lot of people see religion within the school, is based on physical appearance and by what they wear. But it is common to still see students praying before a sporting event or before eating lunch. And of the 5 expressions of religion that are on this stat, 26% of students see one form of religious expression, 20% see 2 forms, 13% see 3, 5% see 4, and 3% at least see all 5 expressions. So this article that these came from, it's a really long article, but it really dives deep into discussing religion in schools. So if you do have the time while we talk about this lesson, I encourage you to take a look at this website and dive deep into what the research says about this topic.
So one way, one way to raise this awareness of religion is to educate the whole community. That includes both the students in your classroom and also outside the classroom, to just create this awareness. So raising awareness of student need can be super important, especially when it comes to an individual being in your class who has a diverse religious background that no one else has, to raise awareness for them, and not in a way that calls them out, but in a way that supports them, respects them, and just helps other students understand where they're coming from. just the same as you would educate them on any other religion, to present it in a respectful way, without creating a huge scene, but just able to recognize the differences and the connections, just to raise that awareness. And of course, always support your students. Love them through whatever they believe. And it doesn't mean you have to start believing what they believe. And that was the other thing that the video talked about, assuming that you've watched that already, is respecting religion as like a right, even if it's not your own religion, but just like standing up for the freedom to believe what you believe can be super important. And being able to have those productive conversations with people is awesome. Of course, be sensitive, be conscientious of who you're speaking to and who may be affected by what you say, is always a good rule in any realm, but especially with religious diversity in the classroom. Also, parents may face some struggles with their students, with their children attending a school that maybe doesn't accommodate their student very well. So to raise awareness of the struggles that the parents face is also a really important aspect of being a teacher. You do have to work with the parents a lot, and so you need to consider that. And then discussing real life scenarios can also provide ways for people to kind of see what this looks like when it's actually applied. So I next have this quote. Learning about other religions and cultures in a respectful environment does not imply loss of the child's unique religious or cultural identity. So I kind of want to compare this to something that we probably relate to a little bit better. So imagine you're sitting at a lunch table in the caf, and you ask everyone at the table to share something about their hometown. After hearing about each of their hometowns, you now understand more about who they are and where they come from. Okay, follow-up question. Does that knowledge change where you come from? Hopefully not. You maintain your own sense of identity in your hometown, but you now have a greater understanding of the others at the lunch table. And the same goes for religion. Learning about Hinduism does not mean that you're going to convert to Hinduism. You simply understand Hindus better now, and you maintain the identity that you have as a Christian or whatever you may be. So that's something to keep in mind as you're having these conversations. Learning is good, and understanding is really good, and it doesn't mean you have to change. It just means that your understanding of them is going to change. There's also this issue of prayer rooms that's been a somewhat recent development in public schools, and it's a big debate. A lot of people are in support, but basically a prayer room is just an empty classroom, and it's there for quote unquote student-led activities. So they get to choose what they want to use it for. But the purpose is to provide a location for students to pray or to lead religious activities. But of course, you can't necessarily say that. It just has to be a general location for them to use. So they also have things called release times for some students who need to pray at certain times of the day. There have been some concerns about this practice because it does allow students to leave class. And there's some debate about whether or not that should be allowed because, of course, they're missing class and they could abuse that and all these different things. But also it's important to recognize that some religions have to pray at certain times of the day, and to deny them that right doesn't seem fair either. So a few things that are the main focuses when we're talking about religious accommodation in the classroom is one, equal accommodation. So if you're going to accommodate the kid who's Jewish, you should also accommodate the kid who's Muslim. And that's just how it is. That's how we always treat things in the classroom, is try to keep things equal opportunity as best as possible. So yeah, of course, those accommodations will look different, but the fact that there are accommodations that exist should be focused on. Then to avoid undue burden on the school. So of course, I don't think that prayer rooms are an undue burden on the school. I also don't think it's an undue burden on the school if people wear headdresses or whatever they need to do. And most people agree with that. Most schools around the country are in support of those things. Undue burden would be something slightly more extreme. And I think that if that were the case and if something came up along those lines, then that would be a different conversation to have. But those are the two things that are the requirements for religious accommodation.
And so I want to talk a little more about the articles in the course pack. So this is one of them. It was, the title of the slide is Tweeting About God. So we know which article this is about. But the reading in the course pack was about a football coach. Assuming that you've read this article, I'm just going to kind of summarize this. His name is Coach Freeze from the University of Mississippi. And he had posted about God in the Bible on his Twitter account. But an atheist activist group tried to silence him for speaking about his beliefs online, since he occupied a coaching role at the public university. And it said in the article that the group respected his rights to post on his Twitter account as a private citizen, but they did not want him to post anything related to religion while he was in a coaching position at the university, especially using the Twitter handle that he had, because it looked like an official account that should be used for coaching purposes. And so the group that tried to silence Coach Freeze from posting on his Twitter account had also tried to silence another coach at the university, Coach Maurice, for being similarly religious. And so after all of this, a law firm had gotten involved, and the atheist group had written a letter to the university saying that their actions and Coach Freeze's actions violated the Establishment Clause. And so this law firm instructed the university to just ignore the group's efforts to silence these coaches, because they stated that just because Hugh Freeze, the football coach at the University of Mississippi, did not mean that he had lost his First Amendment rights simply because he was the football coach. The First Amendment protects every person to engage in their own religious expression on social media or in their everyday life. So it's important with this to just keep in mind that your First Amendment rights, they stay with you, and especially with public universities or just public schools. I mean, your religion stays with you, and so you can express that, but it's also important to keep in mind, and I know that this football coach was not forcing it on anyone. People had the choice to follow him on Twitter and see what he was tweeting. So it's just important to keep in mind that we do have First Amendment rights that do protect us, so we can have our own religious expression. And so to kind of wrap up with this, I wanted to end with some reflection questions, since we can't discuss them in person today. So the first one is, if I teach at a Catholic school, how can I make sure to make every student feel included and comfortable if they are not Catholic? So I had an experience at Mar Hill while I was tutoring, and I was able to talk with a student for several of my visits there. And she had expressed to me that she was not Catholic, and she was just having a hard time with religion. She had struggled with what she believed because she just needed to see it to be real, to actually believe it. And I was kind of taken aback, but I was also just amazed with her openness and being willing to share that with me, especially at a tutoring session when there was, no one was coming to me, but she felt that she could just come talk to me about it. And so with this, I was just able to meet her where she was at and just listen to what she had to say. And that moment didn't affect the conversations we had after this. And we were still able to just meet each other where we were at and accept what each other believed. And it was a great way for me to just accept her and just love her as a person. And so the second reflection question that I have is, since we kind of talked about this, how can I incorporate religion into the curriculum in a public school? And so I have another example of while I was in high school, my history class had a whole unit on different world religions. And so we all got to learn about them. And I thought this was so beneficial because it allowed me to have an appreciation for other religions and cultures. And it also allowed for a greater understanding of where your students come from as a teacher. And then their classmates can have a better understanding instead of hurting each other through comments that could come out rude or insulting if they didn't know anything about each other's religions. And so the classroom community could be built through this, and it could just have an acceptance for everyone that could be formed. And so in this case, as educators, we could inform our students. We don't push them to believe or conform, and we just meet them where we're at.
Awesome. So that kind of wraps up our presentation. I hope that it gave you some thoughts to consider and maybe provided a little bit of a challenge, because we're all going to be facing a lot of these questions, whether we teach at a public school or a private Catholic school. Even as a theology teacher, and I know Maggie's in the same case, it's going to be almost an eye-opening experience to try to present the faith, but also to remember to respect all the others. So I hope this provided some food for thought, and thank you so much for listening. Go have the best day ever. Bye.